French, a Middle East-based partner in PwC's Capital Projects and Infrastructure team. Welcome to this panel discussion that will look to explore the significant opportunities to transform our industry presented by the level of infrastructure investment taking place in our region. We all know that as an industry, engineering and construction and infrastructure has spectacularly failed to transform and improve productivity over the last 50 or so years, and it still lags behind many industries in terms of skills, technology and sustainability. There's a real risk that the rapid growth and demand generated by the level of spend in our region with these challenges will create challenges that will be massively intensified. But in equal measure, the volume of investment presents a massive opportunity like never before to use technology to transform our industry. In this panel, we're going to explore the latest advances in data and technology and why the time is now to transform our industry. We've got a great set of panelists here today to explore this topic. We're joined by two of our Technology Alliance partners, Dev Amratia, co-founder and CEO of nPlan, an AI company that forecasts the outcomes and risks of construction projects using data from over 750,000 projects. Massively exciting company that Dev runs. We're also joined by Sharif Alabed, part of Oracle's Global Industry and Innovation Strategy team for construction and engineering, focused on executing digital transformation technologies for major strategic programs within the region. We're also joined by two of our own from our Capital Projects and Infrastructure team, Lee Tilhun, a partner who focuses on capital project innovation and strategy, and Sean Rees, a project technology specialist who looks at data transformation as well as the design and implementation of major project technology solutions. So look, without further ado, let's get into question one, which is for you, Lee. So I talked a little bit in my introduction about the challenges that the capital project and infrastructure industry has had around keeping pace with other industries in the way that it transforms. That said, you and I are working on clients where we're seeing things start to change. Can you talk to us a little bit about the types of innovations you're seeing clients start to adopt and where you see things going in the next few years?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Rupert. So maybe just take a step back. I think you touched on it in your introduction around the construction industry, unfortunately, being lagging in terms of productivity growth. At the same time, I think as you mentioned, technology adoption has also been at the lower end of the scale compared to other industries. And I think if you think why is that is, I think there's a number of reasons. One is just the general dynamics of the construction industry, right? Projects are temporary. And a lot of the time, the market doesn't have enough visibility for them to be able to invest in technology to make the right investments. And the other one is around the margins within the industry are quite tight. So the taking a risk and making a bet on technologies historically has been very difficult. But the time has never been better for them, right? So data has never been cheaper. Technology has never been more accessible. The values at stake have never been bigger because, to be honest, if you look at the giga projects that are happening in the region, you just can't imagine a way they'll be able to deliver the ambitions that they have, doing things in a traditional way, which we know historically has failed, right? So the need to shift is there. Now we're getting the executives and the seniors within the industry are starting to become more and more receptive. So as you kind of see the tailwinds happening, so what are the kind of technologies we're looking at, right? So look, one of the challenges is that the construction technology ecosystem is highly proliferated, if I can say that word, which is very difficult for me to say. And what you're saying is that the deals and investments within the context space have been growing at about 80+% over the last 5 years. So it's a very active market. And you're also seeing sales in contact been growing double digits since 2018. So the stuff is happening, right? The question for most clients is what to buy. There's a lot of solutions out there. Everybody's offering a number of things. New startups are coming every time. There are some that stand out like nPlan, but there's a lot out there. And I kind of think about this in three buckets, right? So one is you say, okay, the clients need solutions to be able to run their projects for organizations effectively, right? They need to be able to make decisions well. They need to be able to procure better. They need to be able to manage documents better. They need to manage their resources. So there's also some digital solutions because projects for organizations are becoming huge, right? To deliver some of these capital programs. So how do they do that? There's an element around productivity. How do you actually make projects more productive, run better, run faster, etc.? And then the certain elements around just construction ecosystem is so complex, right? You have too many organizations involved at any one time across the supply chain, stakeholder groups, etc. How do you actually get all these organizations to collaborate to work better together? So for me, I kind of think about them in these buckets. I try and put a solution, you're either doing this, that, or the other. And there are two types of solutions. You have the platform solutions, and you have the points, what I call the point solutions, that people are addressing a schedule problem, or etc. And then you have the platform solutions, which are a bit more trying to be integrated. But if I look at sort of touch on one or two of these, obviously you have generative AI becoming something more and more influential within the space, right? You have generative design come into play. You know, you can apply generative AI to look at how do you optimize your portfolio and asset mixes. You can apply Gen AI across, actually Dave is going to touch on that in terms of how they will be using machine learning and analytics. And I think Sean will talk about that as well. One thing we've been doing recently is robotics. So in terms of that kind of sits within driving productivity part. So we're helping a client of ours how to actually use robotics to industrialize construction within a manufacturing context. So essentially taking out of the site, taking into a factory, and then delivering it back to site. And within the factory, it's like the Tesla Gigafactory and using robots. Interestingly, Tesla has a 95% automation rate within its factories. We've been able, off the bat, trying to deploy technology that's never been done before with 80% automation within a factory. And we're only able to do that because of how advanced technology in robotics and analytics and AI is. Now these robots, you can just feed them the shop drawings and they're able to figure out and assemble by reading and assessing, analyzing and learning as they go along. So those are sort of a couple of use cases that I can probably point out. But I think that in summary, there's a massive tailwind, things are going in the right direction. There's real technologies out there delivering real solutions, and hence I think there's never been a better time to be in this space.
And you touched on robotics. What have been some of the blockers that you've seen? Why isn't everyone doing what the particular client that you were talking about is doing?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting is that the blockers are all traditional, right? So when you try, again, we're trying to apply this on a giga project, so the scale is massive. These organizations will have to go they have to grow 100x in their production capacity. The technology has never been tested. They need to scale up 100x in less than 2 years. So then you're looking at investors going, do I trust these companies to be able to actually scale up at that rate to deliver on these massive programs? The other one is to say, you also have skepticism around, does this really work? Has this really been tested? Do I want to take a risk on my project rather than he tried, and then once he tries, then I'll buy it. So I think there's a question of, even though the numbers and the assessments show us that there's a huge, you're looking at using robotics, we're able to reduce the labor rate by a factor of 100. And that's important because there's labor shortage. There's just not enough people to do all this work. So being able to reduce your labor demand by that much is hugely important. The other one is that just the rate at which we can actually produce this, the cost. So we can produce the same assembled item at 40% less cost than you can do it in a traditional way. Now, all of this is on paper, right? So we've done the analysis, we've done the proof of concept, there's a machine, there's a plant running, people can go and play with it. The question is, can it scale? And I think that's the biggest question that we have, and I think that's what we're trying to solve.
Okay, great. And you touched on AI, and I think that's a good sort of segue into my next question for you, Dev. If I think about the last 12 months, it just seems to me like the pace of change with AI, generative AI, and some of the new technologies that you hear about every day, it just seems to be massive. Given what you do and what your business does, how do you think AI is going to change the face and nature of project delivery? What are the sorts of things that you're seeing happening in the way that we do things in big mega project delivery?
Firstly, I'll say everything I'm about to say about the future of AI is going to be wrong. Because none of us here could really say 5 years ago that what we're seeing today was going to happen, right? Maybe a few people, but generally speaking, no one could have anticipated the rate of change we see today. And that rate, Rupert, is only going to accelerate. So if you think it's moving fast now, hold on to your seats, right? Now, your question about what does this all mean for capital projects, right? These long cumbersome, expensive investments we make to create the world we live in today. The first is, I think we're going to see shifts in two areas. One is decision quality, and the second is administration. The first is decision quality. I think this is the big, really interesting space to examine. AI is now capable, I'm not talking about the future, is now capable of assessing data in a way that is more rigorous than any human being on the planet can do, including project data. I'm not talking about generic data sets here. I'm talking about costs, schedules, safety incidents, right? And therefore can make better informed decisions than most project teams can make on their own. So you think about what that means, it means how we take decisions on projects is going to fundamentally change. The second part is around administration. If you just look at how much administrative load is carried on a project and inside organizations that execute projects, it's unbelievable, right? We don't have the people available to do this work. We need these people to do creative work. We need these people to execute decisions. We need these people to negotiate, to do the things that human beings are best at doing, which is unfortunately not administrative work. So I think we're going to see vast shifts in the business models that we're seeing in the markets today, how we think we should deliver projects today with lots of people doing administrative work, taking mediocre quality decisions, which leads to poor outcomes, is going to change. It's already changing today. I'm excited that we get to work on this together, and that shift is going to just keep getting faster and faster. And that will come head to head with the skeptics, right? The people that say, I don't think my project needs this, or I don't think this will work on my project. Well, in the world where you have the economic equation about to use robots or not use robots, imagine when you just don't have a choice. You don't have a choice as to whether you should be using a piece of technology to deliver your asset, because the other alternative is you hire people that don't exist.
Exactly.
Yeah, and touching on that, and maybe I'll sort of ask you this question, Sharif. You're from Oracle. If I think about Oracle, you're sort of quite ubiquitous across the capital project delivery space. How are you seeing artificial intelligence transform the way that clients are doing things when you go out and operate with your clients in the capital project delivery space?
Well, now it is enormous. But first, when we look at the asset, we have to define what is the journey of the asset all the way from the beginning. In strategic major programs, what we see quite often is seeing our clients starting with something called initial asset brief. And that asset is big. It includes a lot of projects, buildings, programs inside. And at that time, we have to come back to the basics. And the basics are people, process, and platform. When you look at the technology, for example, we see organizations, when they start authoring projects, is look at the best of the point solutions at the beginning, trying to get the best in class of scheduling, project controls, safety, quality, stage gate management, compliance, etc., without focusing on a platform. This does not work in strategic major programs. Then when these projects are starting to mature and we bring in the entire ecosystem of stakeholders into the picture, this is where the platform has to start kicking in here. Collaboration is a key in strategic major programs because they tend to last longer, they have certain KPIs to be delivered against, and quite often these projects would require a plan of works or a stage gate management that needs to commission, authorize these projects moving from a stage to another. At this point, you have to decide on a certain framework for the delivery of the project. If you want to do it right and you're having an eye on the operation, then it means that the way of the project delivery has to be very asset driven. And that's what we're caring about at Oracle. A few years ago, we started working on what we're calling the Oracle Smart Construction Platform, and you'll be surprised to hear that this is not just an Oracle ERP, Primavera, Akinex, and the best-in-class project management solutions. We've also looked at the innovation at a paramount shift from looking at manual-driven applications to also bringing the technology, such as the AI, in order to improve the asset delivery. Think of the gigantic projects happening in Saudi Arabia and UAE with a demand on highly skilled set people and resources from quality, from delivery, etc., etc. We brought in the AI in reality capture, if you might be familiar with, where we capture the projects and the actual construction, compare that to the design, and there are too many digital platforms that they can tell you what is the level of maturity of the asset, was it built based on the right specs or not. And if you're not bringing all of this together during the span of the project delivery itself, chances are when you're switching into operation, which we're calling the digital handover, you'll be missing a lot in terms of having the objectives of the delivery of that particular project or facility and why it was built for. And also you're missing on your total cost of ownership. A lot of complications happen in terms of managing budget changes, budget variations into the project, just because we're missing the initial point why we're building the asset. Also, when we're talking about the AI, the first thing that it pops up in mind is AI is commanding something or ordering something to do something, right? So a space or an asset that requires certain parameters or thresholds to be operated if it hits that particular threshold. In the construction industry, the biggest demand and use case for the use of AI is the data. Because what we don't realize in construction is that we are sitting on piles of data that we're not aware where to use them and how to leverage them. And this is where the data science and generative AI comes into play in order to bring in predictive analytics at every step of the way in managing that particular project and accordingly the assets.
Great, thanks. You touched a bit on the readiness of our clients to be able to adopt technology. I'm going to come back to you, Dev, if you don't mind. I guess I sometimes feel like I sit there and I listen to people talking about artificial intelligence, and it seems to be the panacea for every single problem that the world has ever got, right? You know, you talk about a problem in our industry, and someone will say, well, AI can solve that, right? And you know, it seems to be that it can solve everything according to some people. But what would be your recommendation for the things that our clients need to do to get ready for the change that you set out is coming?
Yeah, there's a culture change and a process change, right? So the culture change is really simple. This is not go transform everyone, go hire different people, not at all. This is simply the willingness to have an open mind to an alternative source of information appearing on a project. I agree with you. AI is not there to solve everything. AI does not dig holes in the ground for us, does not know how to pour concrete. Well, maybe knows how to, but will not go and do the work, right? Of course. You might need a robot to do that. But that's what I was thinking. The culture change, to the first point, the culture change needed is be open-minded enough to receive information that could have been created from a source that you are not used to. Mm-hmm. If a project director is typically accustomed to receiving information from a risk manager, and instead you could just ask an AI system, could you tell me a little bit more about that risk that I'm facing and what I could do about it? That's an alternative source of information flowing in a project. The second is you have to have processes that would allow you to do this, right? That means you have to have a structure available within a project team for information to be created and acted, the latter being the more important one. We know how to create, there's tons and tons of data, as Sharif has said. Being able to interpret that data and get it into an actionable state where someone can do something to improve the outcome of that project is a harder thing to get right. How do you set up a project team in the right way such that the organization is as lean as possible, as efficient as possible, because now that project team is boosted with a system by its side that can give it information in a way that is far less cumbersome than has ever been seen before. We're used to thinking that we need hundreds of people on a project team to generate reports for us. You just don't need that anymore. So you have to be open-minded that that is actually possible today. That's not every person on a project team, right? I just said reporting as that one point example. And two, you have to have the process to allow you to reap that benefit out.
Yeah, great. And we were talking about it just before this panel as well. Really bad project controls, which is a subject close to my heart. That is always a rear view mirror looking type service, right? The 100-slide deck of report that tells you what's just happened on your project. Really good project controls is the what's about to happen on my project and what can I do about it. And then, when I see things like ChatGPT and some of the sort of natural language type ability that AI is potentially going to bring us, wouldn't it be great if in the future someone could sit there, ask a natural language question to a system like yours or yours, Sharif, that gives you the answer to those forward-looking questions, that tells you what's about to happen and what can I do about it.
Can I give you a snippet, a forecast of my own about the future that I'm probably going to be wrong at? But I don't think the future is asking questions. I personally don't love typing a question out and waiting for a response. I'm lazy. And I think humanity is also lazy. I think that the next systems that we will see within the year, so this is not 2028 and beyond, 2024, we'll see the advent of systems that will automatically understand what's happening on a project and will give you the response before you ask the question. It will know that your supply chain is faltering, therefore your cost estimate is not reflective of the destination you're headed towards, will issue the action plan to mitigate that supply chain risk straight into your inbox, right? If you're the person that's going to have to do the work to execute the change, right? You're not asking the question, because as soon as you ask it, if you are the one asking the question, you have to know what question to ask.
Yeah, exactly, right.
But the age-old question is, the age-old challenge with that is, if you just didn't ask the right question, you're not going to get the right response. And AI systems will surpass that ability in 2024.
Great. And I guess, when I hear you speak, when I hear everyone speak, for me, it starts to hit home that actually some of what we're talking about here is really going to be a solution to some of the labour shortages that we all see happening right now at our clients in this region. So I'll come to you, Sean, now on that subject in particular. When you look at the volume of spend that's about to happen in our region and the ramp up in that spend, how do you see technology, and we've touched on some of this already, but how do you see technology and different ways of doing things in project delivery helping us to solve those labour challenges that we all know are coming down the track?
Okay. I look at it through a few different lenses. The first one, which we broadly touched and covered, is around productivity and efficiency. If you look at the life cycle of a program, through from the development of the master plan through to the business cases development, the complex capex procurement, the claims, for example. What I'm seeing on the ground is tons and tons, piles of spreadsheets, of slides being not only developed, a lot of time validating them, a lot of time reconciling them, a lot of time debating them. And that for me is one of the key areas, obviously, where productivity increases can be doubled. I've seen examples of having the time of developing this content using generative technologies and also good data management systems. And so that certainly is part of the answer to the shortage in the skills market. For that to happen, you really need a strong focus on data strategy, on transformation, and on change management. And I guess, unfortunately, in a way, in our industry right now, with the tight time pressures to deliver some of these unique and incredible projects, that it's not always high on the priority list. And so there is a shift in mindset around looking at what's right in front of us in terms of being able to deliver the short term versus actually the benefits that the technology could bring in the longer term if that prioritization got shifted slightly more towards technology. The second topic I think that's quite important is around the hybrid and the virtual working. For the foreseeable future, project teams, certainly core members of the project teams, will need to be on the ground, on site. But the situation right now is that all of the teams need to be on the ground. And I think the biggest barrier to this hybrid virtual working is the lack of access to good quality information. Be that because the data is out of date, because the data has conflicting different versions of the truth, or because it's not easily accessible, or even people know where to find that information. So what you find is that teams have to be together physically so that you can go to the person next to you to get that information quickly and find the right people. And it's all people-based, which is why we have to have the teams. And so thinking about some of the technologies that are out there now, the virtual reality design studios that in theory will actually right now be more efficient and more effective than in person when you're online, because you all are working together, you all have access to the same information and can make decisions faster. So I think the activation of this hybrid working certainly will bring some of, again, those answers to the labour challenges, because it will start to give management confidence that teams can be off-site, they can be working collaboratively together. And so I think we really need to be constantly challenging ourselves around that. And the last point I'd make is around managed services. And I think the emergence of managed services providers in the asset development and delivery space. And there what I'm talking about is specialist managed services, again around capital project controls, around claims management, around CapEx CapEx procurement, that really starts to shift that focus from our large development companies individually having to invest in technology to these managed services providers who are serving multiple of these infrastructure development companies and are driven by efficiency. Their operating model is designed around being able to deliver more effectively, more efficiently than the traditional method of delivery. And so they are investing in technology. They are investing in technology across the board to enable the access to the wider pool of resources that might not have to be on site. And so I think that's really an area to look out for and a space to watch.
Yeah, great. And I feel like, and you touched on it in your answer in part, that is going to require, especially in this region, a bit of a mindset shift from the big operators of large, complex projects, right? Lee, how do you think we're going to get past that barrier of what clients think they need in terms of an army of project controllers to give them the rear view mirror 100 slide pack of project controls reports versus a better way of doing things? How do we convince clients to adopt a different solution to this problem?
Big question. Look, I think as I'm hearing what we're talking about here, look, it starts with clients asking for this. Okay, I have been in situations where I've worked with contractors where they have offered more technologically enabled solutions, and he was not compliant with the bid, so the client never bought it. So almost the market is not incentivized to drive innovation because the clients are asking for very traditional services, right? We were talking earlier, give me 10 schedulers and 20 commercial guys, and not give me a service that solves this problem, figure out the most efficient way to give me that. So they're asking the questions in the wrong way, so the market is responding to the way they're asking the questions. So I think it starts with that. Because projects are highly commercial environments, right? It's just full of contracts. And once you sign a contract, you create a commercial divide that now limits you for you to ask that question if you haven't asked it already, changing change, variations, etc. So it comes back to prioritization, almost planning in advance on how you want to execute this project and what your strategy is around developing technology. So projects organization needs to be more responsible and smarter in order to leverage the supply chain in a more innovative way. Because they set the requirements. The market will respond to them, and they can set the market tone in the way. I have seen clients that have set a barrier around, if you want to work with me, you need to have A, B, C, D. And to be honest, that in itself filters which companies will actually bid for it. So I think there's a massive sort of role that can play. And I'll just come back to the managed services, right? So if you might compare traditional program management consultants to managed services, right? So one approach is basically to say, we're going to give you a lot of muscle and power to execute this humongous thing on your behalf. The managed services is saying, I will deliver an outcome for you, right, to help you deliver this humongous thing. And they're very different ways to approach the same problem, right? So for example, procurement you touched on, Sean, right? So somebody will come and buy a lot of people that are going to sit down and just run a bunch of procurement, so a bunch of category managers. Or you can use analytics to say, okay, because one thing AI does for you, and I'm not a tech guy, is it can compute a lot of data and run a lot of scenarios. So for you to be able to decide, if am I going to buy steel in bulk, in what volumes, at what price, and from where, to run those scenarios when the steel prices are changing in real time, and be able to make real-time decisions and smart decisions. And you don't need that many people, right? You just need one person who understands the market, a lot of computing power, and they can buy smartly. Yeah. And the thing is, and that's what a managed service will offer you, is a tech-enabled one person as opposed to a bunch of people sitting down to buy the same categories. So I think clients, in my view, need to ask the right question, and the market will respond to it.
Can I build on that? Because I used to be a client in my past life, and I didn't know I had to ask that question. So where does it start, right? I would say inspiration is where inspiration, right? And where does inspiration start from? Well, it comes from evidence. The evidence, I'll speak very briefly on this, but there is a client in the UK, a rail client in the UK, they're building a project called the Transfer Route Upgrade. We've been working with them for 2.5 years, nearly 3 years now. And in that period, that organization has shifted away from, started with like, not so sure, will it work? It works. It's been 3 years now. And the outcomes they can now report, right? It's like, how much more effectively is this project being run? What is the effect on its cost, on its schedule, on its performance, even on the morale of the project team, right? Something that you don't often talk about as a metric of future success. But the project team are just happier because they don't get to do the menial work they used to do before, when there were hundreds of people doing some of those tasks, right? And bringing these case studies and making them real and saying, look, there is already a better way of doing these things. You now have a choice, right? So are you inspired enough based on real evidence that exists in the world in order for you to change the question you pose into the market to then receive the managed service on the other end of it?
Yeah.
Great. Look, it's an absolutely fascinating discussion, and we could go on all day about it. We could have a discussion all day, but unfortunately I've got to bring things to a close because we're kind of at time. But look, hopefully everyone's understood from this discussion that we've got a massive opportunity in our region to properly transform the way that our industry does things. I, for one, am incredibly excited to be here in this region, helping our clients to improve project delivery. It's a fascinating time to be in this industry. The last thing that remains for me to do is to thank you guys for joining us here on this panel. So thanks to Lee, to Dev, to Sharif and to Sean. And look, thank you guys for listening. Hopefully that was an interesting panel discussion. Thank you very much.